welcome back to Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCoster. In this episode, we will be previewing Mo Donegal for this year's Kentucky Derby as part of our Kentucky Derby Contender Profile series that we've done the last few years on this channel. Easily one of my favorite things we do every year with Racing Rundown, given how all the positive feedback we get. Last year, we had people telling us they picked Medina Spirit because of this. My preview I did for him last year. We had people saying they faded horses that didn't run well because of that. It's just great to see, because at the end of the day, we're trying to help you with this series, giving objective ideas, looking at their resume, breaking down replays and charts and numbers and everything in between, so we can help you figure out how you want to use this horse. I love to compare horses to past Derby runners, whether they ran well or whether they ran poorly. That's kind of what I did last year with Medina Spirit, comparing him to Real Quiet, saying that he's always there, he's always gritty, and that's obviously a big positive come Kentucky Derby time, and certainly we saw that. So plenty to love. Mo Donegal, easily Todd Pletcher's A horse this year, one of the stronger horses I think he's ever brought to the Kentucky Derby, and it doesn't hurt that Irad Ortiz Jr. will be back aboard Mo Donegal for the Kentucky Derby itself. Obviously, Irad yet to win the Kentucky Derby or really have a horse make an impression in it, but given he's one of America's top riders and has been for the last 5 to 10 years, his time is certainly coming soon, and Mo Donegal very well could be that colt. One feature we're really excited to add this year to our Kentucky Derby profiles is replays, breaking them down. If you've listened to my profiles in the past, you've heard me break down a lot of trips without being able to pinpoint them at certain times within the actual race, just because we didn't have necessarily the software, the tools at the time to put that together. Well, we're going to go the extra mile this year and do that, as we're going to go through all Mo Donegal's races in this episode. Starting here, you saw him break a little slowly from the inside, green cap with the yellow and green checked silks there, and it's a rough go. This is his debut. Todd Pletcher horses typically need their first race, and he did not get along well with Javier Castellano here, and that's not Castellano's fault. That's the horse's fault. He obviously broke slow from the inside draw, hustled up, got uncomfortable in behind horses, may have even been checked a couple times. But right here, he's probably, 12 lengths out of it and not making much of an impression, being asked heavily by Javier Castellano to go, while this top three, clearly more ready to go first time out, are clear, including his stablemate Verratti, who's in front right now with that white bridle, who eventually wins and ran pretty well in a stakes at Keeneland last week. Anyways, these top two getting away very easily. You see Mo Donegal in the back on the wrong lead, hanging on the left right there. Javier Castellano's trying to switch it throughout the entire stretch. You can just see it. And Mo Donegal is as green as can be, as the grass a couple feet inside of him on the infield there. But look at this finish. This tells you all you need to know. This is a good horse for Todd Pletcher. As I said, they usually need one, and he definitely needed that with the distance and the inexperience showing through. Let's move on to start number 2 now. Pick it up just inside the 5 furlong marker. You see him traveling mid-pack, moving up in between horses as that 9 horse, a big long shot, drops back to the outside of him. As we saw in that first race, he was a little bit uncomfortable being inside of horses. He hit the hole perfectly there. And let's not forget, he's stretching out to 1 mile and a 16th from a 6.5 furlong race in this spot. So I mentioned the distance with his pedigree. I'll dive into that in a little bit. Obviously, you're going to want it to stretch out. And here, he's not necessarily picking up right now. You know, Irad's having to get after him a lot. Irad Ortiz was not aboard for that first start. It was Javier Castellano, but Irad Ortiz jumps on here, and he's trying to pick up on the turn, and he's slowly and steadily gaining. The leader looks like he might be gone, but no matter what, you're really excited about what Mo Donegal does. But this is kind of an inkling of what he has now become, which is a multiple graded stakes winner. This is where he shows it, proves his mettle. He just bears down right here. He's still trying to get to the leader, but the final 100 yards, you can just see him knuckle down, get to the wire in front, and then kind of just ridden out. You could tell Irad had a lot of horse under him, and he was just figuring things out, but much more professional this time around. On the correct lead, responding to all the riders' cues, not uncomfortable around horses, and finishing up to the wire full of promise. Really, you can see the light bulb turning on in that final 16th of a mile. On to start number 3 now. This is his graded stakes debut, the Grade 2 Remsen. Not normally a Kentucky Derby standout prep in this century especially, but there are 2 good horses in here. Mo Donegal and Zandon to the outside both picked up major prep wins in this 100-point series, the Bluegrass and the Wood Memorial. And right now, you see Mo Donegal, he traveled in this little pocket spot, pretty close up to the pace the entire way. Here's where things get dicey, though. Zandon, 6-5 favorite off a big maiden win. He shoots up 3 wide on the track, gets good jump on Mo Donegal, and Mo Donegal has to switch to the outside after traveling at the rail the entire way, and that speed horse backing up into him. Right now, you'd think Zandon might be gone, but Mo Donegal, once again, knuckles down. He wants it badly. You can see him really being aggressive here and trying to get to the wire first. Zandon on the inside, battles bravely. Now, this is where things get interesting, and I'm not going to dive into it because it doesn't really affect how well Mo Donegal ran, but obviously, Ira Ortiz Jr. bumping Zandon there, more so him than the horse in Johnny V on Zandon. But I think the horse, Mo Donegal, probably should have been disqualified, but you can't discredit what the horse did here, what either horse did for that matter. I mean, they ran bravely to the line. Zandon galloping out great, obviously, but Mo Donegal galloping out very strong as well. Those two weren't beating much, but at the same time, they put on a show themselves. And as we know now, they're very good horses, but they stamped each themselves as that quality from this race. You couldn't help but be impressed with what both of them did. Now, this is where things get really interesting with Mo Donegal, and it's certainly the worst race of his career. I think worse than the maiden win, given it was his debut. But you just saw him. He broke a touch slowly in some really critical factors here. As you can see, the one Galt has just gone out to the lead. The 8 wide Barrio is going to go challenge, but no one else is really going with him. And as a result, you'll see the quarter and you'll see the half. They set some pretty slow fractions. In addition, Mo Donegal was coming off of a 1.125 mile, 9 furlong race at Aqueduct, where the stretch is pretty long and he's able to really build up momentum there with a wide sweeping turn. Now he's down at Gulfstream Park, 1.116 miles, shorter stretch, not as much time. Closers don't usually fare well here. And as you can see, he's pretty far back there, sitting fifth right now, good 6 lengths off the lead. And another thing is, it just doesn't look like he's traveling well. Ira Ortiz Jr. is clearly getting after him throughout the race. I mean, we still have about a half mile left to run, and he's looking around. He's clearly not as comfortable as he once was. And it's not like the layoff, he hadn't ran in 2 months to this point. It's not like that was what was really affecting him. This is where you could kind of tell he's in trouble. Irad's getting after him, scrubbing him a little, and then he gets between horses and he just kind of shies away. And that's not something he showed in those last 2 races. He was clearly not ready to go between the 2 horses in front of him. Meanwhile, Simplification, coming from further off the pace, the eventual Fountain of Youth winner, who runs second in this Holy Bull, moves up past him. And as of now, Wida Barrio, who wins this race, goes on to win the Florida Derby later, has struck the lead. Mo Donegal picking up again, and he's showing something he kind of showed in his maiden win and in the Remsen. He idles on the turn. He's not really picking up, despite the rider kind of getting after him and trying to maintain position. At this point in the stretch, I'm thinking he runs fifth, maybe fourth. He's just not doing it, and then all of a sudden, he does what he's done his last year. He figures it out, knuckles down, and actually almost gets second here when he really should have ran fifth. So you learned a lot about him. He had a lot of excuses, the distance, the trip, the stretch, the track configuration, really. Nothing worked for him, in my opinion, in this race. So I thought he ran as well as he could, given the circumstances, and obviously set up for an enticing chance at the Wood Memorial. And here is that Wood Memorial, obviously returning to the side of his biggest victory to this point in the Remsen. Breaks a touch slow, and this is very interesting. You knew he was going to be far back. There was a handful of speed horses in here, so you figured he was going to probably be within the last 3. He's last right now, which is further back than he really has ever been in a race before. It is worth noting now, before this race, he was originally scheduled to run in the Fountain of Youth in late February. He drew the outside post, spiked a fever. Just a lot of factors worked against him in terms of running in that race, so they pulled him, said, we'll just wait on the Wood Memorial. So that's why he didn't have a race between the Wood Memorial and the Holy Bull. But now he's here. The leader's early voting, the winner of the Withers a couple months prior, going the same distance and over this same course, and he did it in a very impressive fashion. And right now he's traveling well at the back. Mo Donegal is sitting comfortably. You can tell he's traveling much better than he was in the Holy Bull. And the fractions that early voting is putting up right now is pretty mundane, given that Mo Donegal is trying to come from well off the pace. 47 3/5, that's not going to play into his style at the moment. But you can see him picking up really well, which is very enticing. He's currently passed 2 horses at this point. Both of those horses were actually supposed to be up on the lead challenging early voting, which kind of gives you a good idea of how this race set up for Mo Donegal in terms of the pace. Well, now he moves around a horse, and I touched on it with the Holy Bull. He kind of idled on the turn in a lot of his races, but here, from the 5/16 pole to the quarter pole, he is actually gaining, which is really the first time we've seen him do that in his career. From his maiden win to the Holy Bull third, he's just kind of waiting on horses. And then right here, no worry being in between horses, he dives down to the rail under Joel Rosario, who picked up the mount for this race. Early voting. Looks like he's clear. If Mo Donegal's not here, early voting, he's winning this for fun. And once again, knuckling down. Here he comes after the leader and up in the final strides, gets the job done. He just seems to know where the wire is. And I know a lot of people don't like that term, but it's a fact. He does find the wire very well. It's always finishing up strongly in the dying stages of his races and getting the job done when you might not think he can. So here's kind of the lowdown on Mo Donegal after going through those replays and what I gathered from those 5 career starts to this point. Obviously, good connections. Got to start there. Ira Ortiz Jr., Todd Pletcher. Pletcher, I know that the stats aren't great, but when he brings a good horse to the Derby, they typically run. And Mo Donegal is one of those good horses. What you got to love about him is his willingness to win. He likes to get to the wire first. He's shown that in every single one. You can see him pin his ears back and he gets to the wire first. That is a great, great quality to have. Another pro is the distance. We haven't gotten to see him go a mile and a quarter, of course, but he has given every single indication he is going to relish that. And more so, I think, than any other horse in this year's Kentucky Derby. And I think he might even be a better Belmont horse than he is a Kentucky Derby horse. Not only because of the course experience he has, but he is a horse that clearly wants to run for days watching his replays. And finally, he is battle tested. He has ran against the likes of Zandon, who of course went on to win the Bluegrass. He ran a pretty good race against Wide Barrio in simplification, given all the struggles he had in that spot. And obviously, that last one against early voting was huge, given early voting's win in the Withers was very strong. Initially, we thought it was pretty weak, but then horses that he beat came back to run well in graded stakes. And then, given the fact that he got away with such an easy lead, you had to love how Mo Donegal came and ran him down on the wire because early voting's a class horse. And for Mo Donegal to beat him, given the circumstances against him, was pretty huge. Now, the negatives, his loss in the Holy Bowl. I know I laid out all the excuses he had, which does mitigate that to most effects, but you don't like that a horse can find trouble. And that's another thing. His running style has kind of showed that he can find trouble for himself, or he's not always going to want to put him in the position to win. You go back to the Holy Bowl. He ran in spots. He didn't get over the track too well, it seemed. He was afraid to run between horses. Now, his runs in the Wood Memorial in his maiden win showed he was kind of fine in between horses, but I mean, then the Holy Bowl happens, and you're like, well, where'd that go? So he while he does run a great race every time, he's consistent. He has that willingness to win. He doesn't necessarily like to turn the jets on until the get it going gets late, and by then it might be too late, like it was in the Holy Bowl or his debut, things like that. And then finally, the speed figures. You can see his last 3 Beyers there. The 90 in the Remsen was very strong. The 90 in the Holy Bowl was pretty good. The 96 in the Wood Memorial, though, not incredible. It was one of the weaker of those 100-point prep winners. I'm not the biggest speed figure guy. You'll come to know that if this is your first time joining us. I don't totally buy into them, but it's obviously concerning. Why is he being viewed less? And I know it's formula and timing based for the most part, but why is he being viewed less than these other horses? What can he do to improve? All things we have to weigh. We know speed figures can be wrong. It happened in the Withers. It's happened on many other occasions, but the fact of the matter is that is a negative in my opinion. The fact that he is not viewed by formulaic standards to be as good as some of the other runners in this year's Kentucky Derby. But that being said, he's a horse with plenty of talent. He's a fighter. His running style might lend to some trouble, which I think is going to be the biggest concern heading into the Kentucky Derby, more so than the speed figures or the Holy Bowl loss. But if he can work out the right trip under Ira Ortiz Jr., he'll be a player there at the end. He's going to be searching for the wire. It's just going to be a question of whether he'll be in front or not. That's all I have for this Kentucky Derby profile. We'll obviously see you for 19 other horses. Can't wait for it. Hope you're excited for the Kentucky Derby. I know I am, and we'll see you next time here on Racing Rundown.